So the latest that we've heard from the US Coast Guard is that they have confirmed that 3 vessels have arrived in the area. This is the Titanic wreck site this morning. It's the first update they've given in a few hours. In a short tweet, the agency said that the Canadian Coast Guard vessel John Cabot is conducting sonar searches alongside an offshore vessel and a tug ship. And we also know that a banging noise was heard in the subsearch site, which has given somewhat of a focus, if you like, for what is happening here. Let's speak with Richard Fear, former Royal Navy nuclear submariner. Richard, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you?
Very well. Nobody can really overstate how harrowing and how desperate this is. It's against, clearly, no other way to say it, it really is against the odds as what is happening here. But, of course, people are not giving up and they are doing their best. What do we make of 3 other vessels coming into the area? This is about sonar searching from what we know.
Well, sure. The US Coast Guard are undertaking the coordination of this activity, this search and rescue, hopefully. So they would have called in the best assets available. And, of course, it's a submarine, so radar doesn't work underwater. They rely on sonar and remotely operated vehicles. So it was encouraging to know that we were hearing some potentially noises banging from the Titan. And if they were happening at regular intervals, we read 30-minute intervals, and that suggests it's man-made. But I understand that so far nothing has followed up. There's been no positive ID of the submersible after those banging noises were heard. Yeah. So it is a serious situation. We understand that the auction may run out sometime tomorrow morning. But perhaps what concerns me as a submariner is that, obviously, as humans, we breathe oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide levels on board that little submersible will be quite high. Yeah. And I've not read whether they have any equipment to remove that carbon dioxide. So oxygen is one thing, but obviously the onboard conditions is something else. So I think, there's 2 challenges. One is to find the vessel. And secondly, then to recover it if that is possible. And, the time is not on our side. Just talk us through, Richard, the experience of being on a submarine. I mean, this is a very small vessel. This is really rather tiny, but none of them, by definition, are what you would call spacious. You've spent a lot of time in this position. It's an area, a territory you know very well. What is life like when you are, for many days, sometimes weeks, on a vessel such as this, many, many metres below sea level? Well, it's a strange and challenging environment. It gets to the point where you're just doing a job and you keep busy and you don't think about perhaps the confined space or where you are. So I guess in the Navy I was doing patrols of 12 or 14 weeks dived. And probably for your watchers, the most interesting thing I did was to go under the Arctic ice cap. So suddenly you're not just in a submarine, you've got a roof above you. And that focuses minds a little bit more. Some of our submariners didn't like that particularly, but it was a mission we had to do. So, of course, you're in a confined space. You can't just go and take some fresh air. The biggest challenge, I think, is getting on with other people. You have to learn to find a way to deal with the people you're living in a very close space with. And, of course, there's tensions. Sometimes you don't get on with other people, but you have to find a way to be professional and make it work. So it is challenging, but, of course, you're very confident in the engineering, the training and the operations of those Royal Navy submarines. The situation with this submersible, the Titan, it seems to be an experimental submersible that they're using for, guided tours of expensive guided tours of the Titanic. I mean, it's a great exploration, but the pressures on the submersible at these depths are just unimaginable. Yeah. What was the longest that you spent down there, as it were, Richard, without coming back to base, as it were? So it would have been 12 to 14 weeks. Oh, so that was literally never returning to terra firma. That's right. That's right. But I say you're in a watchkeeping routine. You've got a job to do, and you just get on with it.
Yeah.
The communications are very limited because you can't transmit anything out of the submarine. You can receive messages, obviously for operations, and the families of the submariners are allowed to send a short, like 40-word familygram once a week, which gets sent through Navy Command Headquarters. That has to be scrutinized before it's sent, and scrutinized again by the captain on board before it's given to the sailor to make sure there's no bad news or coded messages in there.
Yep.
So it's quite a isolated existence, and for kids now that grow up with iPhones and constant connectivity, it will feel very strange.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reason I asked the question, of course, is that the psychology of that and the strength of mind required to endure that, even for those, I would imagine, even seasoned submariners and others within the naval world could still struggle with that. I mean, there could be times when one mission is okay, but then the next time it gets you, I would imagine there's a lot of the mental pressures around that existence are huge. And for these people that went off in this very small vessel, they were hoping, of course, to return within hours. I mean, it was, go down, but one assumes take photographs, enjoy this incredible experience of seeing the Titanic and then return. So in addition to the obvious, you talked about air at the beginning, Richard, there will be a huge, a devastating mental impact on these people down there.
Well, indeed, I think they were prepared for a 12-hour mission. They have to get down to the depth of the Titanic, do their tourist thing, take some pictures, have a look, and then come back up. So they would have been prepared mentally for 12 hours, a day trip. To be potentially stuck on the bottom, maybe in an environment where, although the depths of the ocean is cold, it could be very hot, very humid, very claustrophobic, of course, and they may have problems with the air. And they will not know. They will be hoping, of course, that they will be rescued, but they won't know. So it's certainly not a very pleasant situation. And you've got a father and son there as well, which, is terrible. All I can say is that, this is a very unique situation. And I'm sure the rescue authorities, the US Coast Guard and the Canadians are doing everything they can to locate and ultimately recover and hopefully rescue the crew. But it has to be said that this is a very challenging environment. This is much deeper than on normal military submarines operate. And whilst we have rescue vehicles for dealing with potential stranded nuclear submarines, again, it's that they can't operate at the depths of the Titanic. So we're really pushing the technology and what's achievable. I mean, let's hope that they're successful. Yeah. Because nobody wants, this to end tragically.
Of course.
But of course, I think there'll be lots of questions, whatever the outcome is, indeed, the technology involved, how the system is operated, how it's licensed and certified. So it raises lots of questions, and I'm all for exploration. People say we understand less about our deep oceans than we do about space. I'm all for exploration, but it has to be done in a controlled, safe way. Otherwise, it gets a bad reputation for everyone.
Indeed, and you wonder whether there will be many questions post this incident about that. I'm sure there will. Richard, thank you for your time, sir. Richard Fear, former Royal Navy nuclear submariner.